Hello and welcome back to the Knitting Page channel. If you're new here, my name's Paige and I'm the face behind the Knitting Page. Today I have a really fun video for you. Today I have a video that's inspired by Pinterest. And today I'm going to be talking about fisherman core and patterns that we can knit to kind of follow along with this trend. Before I get into the trends, I did just want to talk about trends and fashion in general. I have mixed feelings about trends. There are a part of me that really do love trying out something trendy and experimenting with my sense of fashion. I usually err on the side of sticking to something within my regular realm of what I feel comfortable wearing and pushing the envelope just a little bit. This specific trend is one that has popped up on my Instagram, it's popped up on my Pinterest, and the reason I am so drawn to it is because I'm already drawn to this style of clothing, as maybe some of you are. Fisherman core is kind of an aesthetic that is kind of meant to emulate North Atlantic fishermen, which North Atlantic fishermen and like to wear cabled jumpers and cabled sweaters. And I, as a knitter, also love cabled jumpers and sweaters. Sometimes I find the process not to be the most enjoyable when I just want to mindless knit, but I do love the finished product of having a beautiful cabled sweater. And I think these are things that get passed down through generations. Some of the other components of this fashion trend are stripes, cables, plaid. It's kind of has a laid back maritime vibe in that the sense of, I feel like there's a maritime coastal vibe that is kind of, how do you say, I want to say I guess old money would be the aesthetic. And that's kind of that grandmother's daughter, coastal granddaughter vibe and old money type of coastal nautical stripes. This one is a bit more of something you'd want to wear if you were going to do some dirty work. And it's funny because this is a style that I have been drawn towards from a very young age. I remember going through my mom's closet as a child and just rifling through some of these old coats from Land's End or LL Bean and wearing her little Sperry's or her little Doc Duck boots. And these are kind of the components that are brought into this style. In terms of a color story, there's also a general palette that this fisherman core aesthetic follows, and that is blues, kind of blues of all type, but particularly navy, lots of white, kind of pops of red, and then some browns and some army green. So it's a very overall natural kind of color story. Aside from that red, obviously you can have red in life as well, but I do find that if I go, I am also based on the coast, living in the North Atlantic in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And so this trend feels kind of close to home, and it has inspired some of my recent-ish knits within the past year as I have moved across Canada to the Atlantic coast, where I teach and live here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And so this trend also kind of brings in some graphics of things that are coastal, such as fish, such as lobsters, crabs, just the sea in general. And I think that being a knitter really lends itself to this trend. There are some other trends that have popped up over the years where you could knit your own pieces and do more of a trendy piece. I have followed some of those in the past, and they're pieces that I don't necessarily reach for. Some of the patterns that I have today are patterns that I think could be timeless staples within your wardrobe. And so I've compiled, here are some examples from Pinterest of what the aesthetic generally looks like. Here are some of my little mood board that I have created for this trend. I really, really love creating mood boards, and I really love bringing that to the knit world. I love scrolling through Pinterest and kind of getting inspired. I think this is a side note, but for my spring plans, I'm thinking about that, and I want to be less married to specific patterns and more so married to specific yarns. I have a big goal of working down my stash this year, and I think sometimes I can get caught up in this specific pattern. I haven't knit through all of my winter plans. I don't think I will. Some of them will move to the fall, but I want to try to pick yarns and then have a variety of patterns that I think would work through them, but commit to more of a color story rather than specific patterns. But the fisherman core is something that I really love the aesthetic of. I find that myself, I tend to wear kind of this mix of feminine and masculine style clothing. Some of my favorite pants have been bought from the men's section. I love something oversized. And so this trend, although there are some extremes to the trend, I think overall it would naturally blend into my wardrobe. And I have been reorganizing my room. And so as I've been going through my clothes, I've kind of been seeing pieces that I can try or wear in a different way that I didn't necessarily think of. And I also think that this trend lends itself well to the thrift stores. Obviously thrifting, you know, it's kind of just whatever's there. But I think some of those like old, like things that your grandparents probably have that are made to last, that are functional, that are oversized, that are just good workhorse pieces you can find at the thrift store, lend itself well to this trend. And so I have 22 patterns that I'm going to talk to you about. I also have made a Ravelry bundle with a few others, but I tried to pull out the pieces that I thought were really cute. And so the first one that I want to talk about, also my laptop is just over here, which is where I'll be looking to reference the patterns, is what I think is potentially the world's cutest beanie. I've been seeing these like Arc'teryx hats and have been tempted to try one, but also don't want to buy a hat when I know I can knit. And so I've been kind of intrigued with colorwork hats. This is one that you could kind of do in that Arc'teryx way. There's one that I'll mention later as well. But the first beanie I want to talk about is the Gone Fishing beanie. It is so cute. It is a DK weight pattern. There's 5 different colors involved. It has like a little fish motif around the edge, as well as just some other basic simple colors. It uses 5 colors in total, but you're never working with more than 2 yarns at a time. And so I think it would be a really fun way to use up some of your DK scraps to make a cute little beanie. And I grew up in downtown Toronto, but I did spend a lot of time in Thunder Bay, Ontario, which has like a very large fishing community. Some of my best friends go out and fish, and I just love seeing the photos of them. My grandfather is a huge fisherman. And so although I am not a huge fish person, I have taken a full 4th year level class called Biology of Fishes, where one of the sweaters I'll talk about like brings back flashbacks to try to remember different Latin names of fishes. But I think that this hat is very cute. It's on trend. And then also it just reminds me of some very important people and times in my life, even if I explicitly am not a huge fisherwoman. The Gone Fishing beanie is also created by the Critter Knitter, who has a few different fun colorwork motifs for hats. The next pattern that I want to talk about is one that I'm almost done, but I'm not, and it will get done soon, I promise. But these are the Chaussettes Homard. My French is not great, and I apologize. But this is a colorwork sock pattern that has different motifs of sea creatures. And so I knit these socks. I have 1.5 of them done. I just have to do the foot of my second sock, but I knit these socks as kind of an homage to moving to Nova Scotia. I knit the lobster motif, but there also is a crab motif. This pattern is by Lysandre Hordin. It's a fingering weight sock pattern. It's 3 colors, but again, you're only ever working 2 colors at a time. I find the motifs really addicting to knit, hence me knitting the foot of one, the foot of the ankle of one, like the part with the motif of one, the part of the motif with the other, and then I have to flip and turn the heel of the second sock and then knit the foot. It really shouldn't take me that long. I just haven't been prioritizing it. But a really, really lovely pattern. One that, again, is really great for using up scrap yarns, or if you want to knit a couple different pairs of socks, or you have like a little bit of white left over. I think it would be a cute little pop of color or a little pop of something to the motif, or to the trend, if you don't want to commit to like a full sweater per se. The next pattern that I have is kind of one that is mixing winter trends with the fisherman core trend, and this is the fish balaclava. And again, it is this all over colorwork balaclava with fish motifs on it. It's super fun. It's super quirky. I knit a hood this past fall that I wear all the time, but my one complaint with my hood is that it is quite baggy, and so wind winds up going into my face, and I don't love it. This beanie is a little tighter. Again, it's color work. I've been I haven't been really wanting to do textured knits, but I have been wanting to do color work, although I'm really trying to commit to finishing pieces I've already started and not casting on anything new, unless it's like, I give myself a little bit of grace. But this fish balaclava is just so cute. The next pattern is one that I feel like Florence would like because she loves her mittens. And it is the Whale's Greeting Mittens by Claire Burnett. It's a paid for pattern. It's an all over colorwork mitten pattern with a whale motif on it. So one thing about me is that I was obsessed with whales as a child, which is partially probably why I'm really intrigued to this trend in particular. In grade 2, we did a unit in science all about whales. We learned about the blue whale and the orca whales and the beluga whale. And I remember all of us going outside and walking the distance of a blue whale and just being so enamored and amazed by this giant mammal that exists in the ocean and how it was just so monstrous that we couldn't really like wrap our heads around how big this was. I've always worn a lot of jewelry. I don't have my rings on right now because I've been taking them on and off since I've gotten into climbing, but I used to always wear a whale tail necklace. And it's honestly something that I would like to pick up again because it has a special place in my heart. And so I have this really, really big love for whales. I did this project in grade 2, became obsessed with them, was very into like the West Coast indigenous art and their portrayal of whales. I wore a necklace, honestly, all the way. I had 2 different ones. I had one that I wore, it was like a clay one, and then it broke, and then I had a silver one that I then lost. But I have friends from high school, because I wore it still in high school, that will bring back and be like, hey, remember your whale tail necklace? And I'll be like, yes, I do. And so these are some really cute colorwork mittens that have whales on your fingers. If you are kind of feeling this fisherman core vibe, wanting to get some colorwork mittens in, here's a pattern to do it. The next one is the hat that I think brings kind of like the most replication in terms of aesthetic to the Arc'teryx hat. It is the Seaside Beanie by Sandra Yager. And the reason I say this is because the Arc'teryx hat is like a double knit hat and there's not like ribbing. Most of the hats that I'm seeing have a ribbing end on it. This one does not. Instead, it has alternating colorwork stripes to give it some structure around the brim. Super cute, a whole bunch of different little motifs. It is knit at a fingering weight gauge on 3mm needles. So again, if you have some 2 skeins of fingering, you could work this beautiful little beanie. I also think beanies are kind of fun to wear. Again, I live literally on the coast. Well, my house isn't on the ocean, but the city I live in is on the ocean, and it is crazy, the maritime weather. My parents were visiting this fall, and we drove an hour away to the other side of the ocean in Nova Scotia and drove into a giant thunderstorm while it was sunny 45 minutes away. The temperatures will change. We get freezing rain, giant snowstorms. It's wild. It's wonderful. You can always kind of use a beanie. There have been times in the summer where it's super hot in the city. I drive to the local beach and there's fog and it's super cold. And it's like, I kind of want to hang out the beach, but I'm also kind of cold. And maybe a toque to put on after I jump in the water would be really useful. The next beanie is one by Ozetta, and it is the North Shore Beanie. No colorwork going on here, but I think just a really classic looking hat. And I think part of the attraction towards this hat is the pop of red that's in her sample photos. I like the oversizedness of it. I really like the shaping at the top with kind of its trapezoidal shape. Ozetta patterns, I've never knit one of her accessory patterns, but her garment patterns are just so good that I feel like if you wanted a really good hat pattern, you couldn't go wrong with an Ozetta pattern. And it's a little bit different than your classic petite knit Oslo hat, but just a good basic 1x1 beanie, 1x1 ribbed beanie that again fits that nice aesthetic. And the last accessory pattern that I have is the Lobster Head by Whitney Terrell. And this again is a colorwork beanie. I was really intrigued with these colorwork beanies. I was seeing them while I was scrolling. I've been seeing these Arc'teryx hats literally everywhere. That's kind of probably been in the back of my head and biasing what I've been attracted to. I also just love a good old lobster motif. I have my lobster socks with the Chaussettes Homard socks. There's also a couple lobster sweaters. It's one that's popped up in while I've been scrolling through Pinterest. And that there's this cute little lobster head hat that I think would be a fun little tribute. Again, not needing to commit to something very large, but to knit within this trend. And if you are into the lobster motifs, here is a hat. You'll see a sweater coming up next. But before I get to the next section is all of the garments. mostly sweaters, but I've also sprinkled in a cardigan and a vest here or there. But I am really enjoying my new filming setup. So I am very excited about my new filming setup. I have a studio light, which I feel like is just making the lighting on my face much more even than when I just had my simple lamp and I was trying to get creative with the lighting resources I already had. I decided to splurge and buy a studio light because I want to take this seriously, and it's also why I'm grateful for the sponsor of today's video, which is Skillshare. So Skillshare is this online platform that is created for creatives by creatives. And I used to kind of struggle with thinking of myself as a creative. I always thought, like growing up, that if I was creative, it meant that I was a really good visual artist. And my visual art skills are not that great. I haven't spent a lot of time developing them, but I grew up dancing. I love to knit. I love to take photos. I love trying to do this whole YouTube thing and experiment with different filming, and I continue to want to do that, which is why I'm so grateful that I have Skillshare. There are thousands of classes on Skillshare, and the one that I took and am taking is How to Film Yourself a Solo Filmmaking Masterclass. And I took the class, got to the section on studio lights, and was like, you know what? I think I need to invest in a studio light because I think it will make this filming process a lot more enjoyable. Skillshare also isn't just related to like traditional creative pursuits, but they also have things about productivity, about marketing, about businesses, and it's some of those pursuits that I wouldn't necessarily think of in a creative setting that I also really appreciate Skillshare for. I've been taking some classes on Notion, which is where I have all my notes organized for this video, and I've said it before, but I really like to be a multifaceted person that focuses on a lot of different aspects of their life and trying to streamline and get more creative and just make things more efficient and user-friendly, and makes me want to do it rather than kind of dread doing it, such as filming after work. I used to dread filming because I felt like I had such a narrow window to sit down and record. Now I feel like I have a lot more flexibility because I have a light that I didn't really think about until I watched this class. So very grateful for Skillshare, and the first 500 people to use the link in the description box below will get a free 1-month trial to Skillshare, where you can try to level up your life, get more creative, get more productive. Maybe you want to start a business. All of it's there for you to take, and the bonuses you can knit while you learn, because we all love a 2 birds 1 stone in our busy, hectic lives. So I mentioned before that I took this class called Biology of Fishes by the wonderful Dr. Rennie. But one thing that we learned about was Salvelinus, which is the genus for salmon. So this sweater is called the Salvelinus, the fish sweater, and it has a cute little motif of a salmon on it. It is knit back and forth. It's adorable. I love it. I don't know if I would knit this one per se. I feel like my grandpa would literally rock this sweater so much. But I have not been great at committing to gift knitting, so I'm not going to put that out there. But this super cute sweater that kind of plays into part of like when you look up fisherman core on Pinterest, you come across these sweaters with these like large graphic motifs on them. This is a sweater that you could do that with. It's knit in intarsia, but there's also options to do it as duplicate stitch, so whatever kind of suits your fancy, but a very cute sweater with one of those big large motifs on it to play into the trend. The next sweater is one that I love. It's also used intarsia or duplicate stitch, and it is the Sebastian Sweater. And I can only assume that Sebastian is referencing Sebastian from The Little Mermaid, which who doesn't love The Little Mermaid? But it's a super cute well, not all over, but giant lobster motif down the middle. I love the little accents of navy on the cuffs and the collar of the sweater. I just did a sweater like that for my West Sands test knit. Amazing. It's knit at an Aran weight, so I feel like it would like knit up super quickly. Honestly, if you're Canadian or you just want an affordable yarn, I feel like the Briggs and Little heritage yarn would work so well for this pattern. And it's also from the Atlantic coast of Canada, so you can kind of like double dip in terms of getting it all fisherman core-y. The next sweater is kind of a collection of sweaters, but I'm just going to focus on the sweater, and that is the Halibut by Caitlin Hunter. But Caitlin Hunter has a whole series with this Halibut motif on it, from a hat to a cowl to a cardigan to mitts, I believe, to this sweater. I know it's been super popular, And if you ever wanted to knit it, I feel like now's the season to knit it, because you'll be on trend in the knitting world and in the outdoor world, or the outside world, the real world, not just knitting YouTube. Another part of this kind of trend is having cables and stripes and just having some texture in your knits. And the Braidy loop sweater by Other Loops is one that has always caught my eye. I really love the thick ribbing on it. It reminds me of like plank boards of a ship, and then it has that nice cable going down. I believe it's also a saddle shoulder construction, which I've been obsessed with recently. And just, I feel like it's one that, like for myself, as I want to knit an all over textured sweater, and I'm knitting the Billy pullover, which would also fit into this trend. But this one is very realistic in the sense of the body isn't all over and it's just the sleeves, and you wouldn't have to do like knitting back and forth while also cabling, which can sometimes be a pain. But a very, very cute sweater. The next one is the Korshavn Sweater, which is like this basket weave sweater. I also love that some of these photos are taken like by the ocean. It just makes it feel like it fits this aesthetic. This is by Tanya Hodney. It is a bulky weight sweater, and so I feel like it would just fly off your needles. I love the basket weave texture of it. This one has caught my eye before in both this one and the vest version of it. So again, if you don't want to commit to a full sweater and you want to try the vest and like kind of make it oversized and fun and layer it with some like big white short shirts on underneath, like Bob's your uncle, you go and do you. But a lovely sweater at a larger gauge if that is something that interests you. The next one is an all over texture sweater. It is the, let me try to say this right, the Sibilla Sweater by Cookie the Knitter. It is knit with a DK yarn and 2 mohairs. I feel like I wouldn't do the 2 mohairs just from like a budget perspective, but it's knit an Aran weight. It has like this beautiful woven cable knit texture down the front as like a front panel, which I think looks really lovely. And then some more traditional cables on the outside with cables also going down the sleeves. Very lovely sweater. It looks nice to be oversized, and I feel like it's kind of hitting more of that traditional fisherman sweater that again, this trend is kind of paying homage to. The next sweater that I have is one that's like, it's really cool. Is like kind of like how I can describe it. It's textured, it's geometric, and is the Brizo Pullover by Beach House Knits. It's knit on a worsted weight yarn on 4mm needles. It's got like these little cable, almost like cable ribs going on. There's parts of it that's just plain stockinette. It just looks like it would be like a nice, like do this and then do this and then do this, and it would be like a good piecemeal kind of piece, like I've heard the Ingrid sweater is like, where you just want to get to that next section. These sections are larger, but you're ending with some plain stockinette. It's got some good 2x2 ribbing, which I've been really into as well recently, and I feel like it's just like a nice take on a cable sweater without it being too traditional, but also having it being a bit more funky. I don't know. I saw it. The model's also gorgeous by the ocean, and I'm just like, this feels like it could meet the trend. The next one is another pattern by Other Loops, and it is the Waffle Loop sweater. Just the giant oversizedness of the sweater with the waffle cables on it, I feel like pay homage to it. Part of the trend with this fisherman core is I feel like most of the things are kind of oversized, and this is one where I feel like it's relatively traditional, but also has like a modern take on it. It's oversized. It's the same repeating texture pattern all over, so you don't have to think too much about it. And it's one that I've seen for a while that I have been pulled by, so my bias was to include it in this pattern roundup. The next one is the Augustins Cable No. 3. It is by Anne-Sophia Velling. I've never knit a pattern by her. It came out this February, so it's a fairly new pattern. I really think that there's like this like ribbing up top before you get into the cable that I think is really beautiful. It has some of those more traditional cables on it. It looks like it's a fairly fine gauge. It's not on 4mm needles, so probably a DK, but it's just a very unique take on a cable sweater that I haven't seen before. And I'm not sure if it's like the symmetry between the ribbing up top and the ribbing at the bottom, but it just looks very beautiful. and just like a very classic sweater that's like an heirloom piece that you would pass down from one generation to the next. The next one has a really cute name. It's called the Fisherquine Jumper, and it's by Christina J. Mackenzie. It is knit at an Aran weight, and it's like the big waffle cable down the middle with some cables down the side. Again, another take on a traditional fisherman's sweater, but by a designer I hadn't heard of. It had a cute name, and was just kind of like, I could have included like the Dagmar sweater in. I'll do a quick little mention to it by Petite Knit, but I wanted to try to pull in pieces that like maybe you haven't seen before to support this trend. The next one is, it's one of those landscape sweaters, which has also popped up while looking through photos. And I really have struggled to find patterns that like do this kind of landscape motif on it, even though it's been something that I have been, I don't know. I love the look of them. I think they're super cute. I know I could like make my own pattern and like design it, but and do it on like a regular, a regular sweater pattern, but I have not had the brain power to do that, or like the want or the need to do it. But the Lighthouse Sweater by Lynn and Douglas Barr is a free pattern. It does not hold your hand from the sounds of it. There's only 3 sizes available, but it does give you instructions and the color work charts to knit this sweater, which I feel like if you want a landscape sweater, this is the closest one I've found on Ravelry, like searching farm sweater and things like that. I think it's really beautiful. There are 12 projects on Ravelry, so it must be somewhat usable, because there have been people, as I'm looking through, that have knit this sweater successfully. And I think that the kind of winter coast lighthouse vibe is definitely on trend with this pattern. Would you wear it forever? I don't know. This is one of those kind of more trendy pieces within it. But if you want to give yourself a challenge and do this like intarsia and knit back and forth and create a landscape, here's a pattern to do that. So there's this one picture with this girl on a boat wearing what looks like the Norma sweater with orcas on it. So cute. But my favorite things knitwear came out with a new sweater called the New Norma. And it's just like a chunkier weight Norma sweater. And I am almost done my Norma sweater. I just have to do the sleeves. Actually going to start the sleeves after this video. But the Norma sweater, the New Norma, if you wanted to include like a little whale motif in that, you could do that to emulate the sweater. But this kind of like oversized play on stripes is definitely on par with fitting into this trend. The next pattern is the Windermere Sweater by Cheryl Mukhtari. It is an all-over fisherman's ribbed sweater, which I felt like I had to include one of them. I've never knit fisherman's rib. Would love to do it at some point, but I'm not going to start with a sweater. I'm going to like commit to like a headband or a hat to begin with. But I feel like, again, it's one of those pieces that plays into this trend. It would take you a while to knit, but it would have that long-term wearability, whereas that Lighthouse sweater, you might wear it for a little bit. Maybe it's a cute statement piece, but it doesn't have that versatility like some of these other pieces have. The next one is one that is near and dear to my heart. I have plans to make it. It is the Flagship Vest, and I feel like if you knit this oversized, first off, the colors in the traditional, like the sample photos, are very much on par with the colors of the Fisherman Core trend. I love this vest. I have not knit it, but I have tried it on at the store, and like, I wish I took a photo of myself in it, because my friend and I, when I tried it on, we were like, this just screams me. And so would really, really love to actually cast on this vest. It's knit bottom up, it's steeked, it's stranded color work. There's so many scary things about this vest, which is why it's still sitting in my yarn stash and not on my needles. But I feel like I'm really loving this trend, and I feel like knitting an oversized flagship vest this spring/summer could be a fun thing. Honestly, knitting it in the summer, like a vest, I have the time and the capacity in the summer because I have summers off because I'm a teacher, could be the play. And the last pattern that I have is the Haraboji Cardigan by Ayo Knits. I probably butchered both of those pronunciations. I know someone has commented on my video on how to say Ayo Knits, but I'm blanking on the pronunciation, and I apologize if I just butchered it. But I really love this oversized cardigan. I love the toggles. The cream color, again, it's playing into the pictures and the inspiration pictures that I'm seeing. The cables, just something different. Again, I think there would just be so much versatility in this piece to meet the trend, but also to wear it outside of the trend. And I do think that a cardigan, I'm wearing my cognac cardigan today. It is probably one of my favorite knits I've ever made. I wear it all the time, and there's something about going through the slog of knitting a cardigan. I just get so much wear out of it because I can wear it down up as a top, I can wear it open as a cardigan, I can throw it across my body. There's just a lot of versatility in it. So this was one of the cardigans. There's some others in the bundle, but that is what I have for you today. And it is I'm hoping that I'm going to knit some of these pieces. I did buy the Gone Fishing beanie pattern because I thought it was so cute, and it wasn't a crazy outrageous price. And I feel like I have a lot of people in my life that would enjoy that pattern as well as myself, and to kind of play into the more trendy side of this trend of it being like the fisherman core trend and knitting a fish hat. I think that committing to a hat is something I'm very willing to do versus committing to a full sweater. So that's all for today. Let me know if you kind of like these videos of trying to knit certain trends and finding knitting patterns to correspond with them. I had a really fun time making them. I want to like make whatever videos I want, and I would love to do some like vlogs and days in my life and take you running with me and not only knitting. And so if you want to see more of that in like this style of video, it would mean a lot to me if you subscribed, and also let me know what you're working on, if some of these trends are kind of meeting your needs and knitting wants. I would love to hear if you found any other patterns. Until next time, goodbye.